Hey everyone, welcome back. We are jumping into another deep dive today, and we've got a really, I think, interesting one.
Yeah, should be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so we're looking at Trump's executive order banning men from competing in women's sports.
Okay.
And we've got a whole bunch of articles here that we've been going through.
Lots to unpack.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of at this intersection of sports and politics and gender identity and it's a hot topic.
Absolutely.
So I think this will be really interesting to kind of try to unpack and see what the core arguments are here and kind of what this all means. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, I mean, right off the bat, just looking at this executive order, Trump's stance is pretty clear. Men should not be competing in women's sports. He's framing this as a matter of protecting women, ensuring a level playing field. So I guess to start, what's the reasoning behind that? What are the arguments there?
Well, you see a lot in the source material, just a lot of anxieties about fairness in women's sports. And a lot of this comes from cases where trans women athletes have broken records or had a lot of success. And the argument is that creates a disadvantage for cis women athletes.
Okay, so there's like a perceived inherent advantage.
Yeah, and they actually cite some science in these articles. There's a study from the Journal of Sports Science that showed a statistically significant difference in muscle mass and bone density between cisgender men and women. And that's even after hormone therapy.
Oh, wow. So they're using data to back up this idea of a biological advantage.
Exactly. And they often point to some specific examples, like the case of Laurel Hubbard, a weightlifter who competed in the Tokyo Olympics.
Hmm.
Trump and others highlight cases like this to say, look, this is what happens. This is why it's not fair.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that example is used.
Yeah.
But and this is something that I've been thinking about as I was reading through all this. It's obviously not just about sports, right? This is deeply political.
Oh, absolutely. And Trump really leans into that. He repeatedly criticizes Democrats for opposing the ban, and he's accusing them of pushing, like a radical gender ideology. He even goes so far as to link it back to Obama-era policies,
Oh, wow.
claiming that those laid the groundwork for what he sees as a weakening of traditional gender roles.
So it's painting this picture of like a cultural battle. He's
Yeah.
on the side of traditional values, and the Democrats are pushing something else.
Exactly. And you see him using terms like feminist agenda. He's tapping into a specific type of feminism, one that really prioritizes these biological differences between men and women and focuses on protecting women's spaces, women's sports. But it is important to note, and we see this in the articles, that that's not a universally accepted definition of feminism.
Mhm.
A lot of feminists argue that true equality means inclusion and recognizing the rights of all women, including trans women.
Right. So there's a very specific framing that's happening
Absolutely.
with this. Um, so how does this all tie into the larger conversation around gender identity?
Yeah.
Because this is something we talk about a lot, but this seems like a very specific.
Yeah, it's a very specific lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been very vocal about his stance on transgender identities in general. He uses terms like insanity and delusional to kind of dismiss the idea that people can identify as a gender different from what they were assigned at birth. And, that resonates with the certain part of the population, but it also alienates and marginalizes trans people and their allies.
Right, and it really kind of frames this as a black and white issue. But I'm also seeing that there is pushback against this executive order.
Oh,
Right,
definitely.
it's
Yeah.
it's not just like everyone is on board with this.
Yeah, you see legal experts arguing that this is discriminatory, violates Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination in educational programs, and that includes athletics. And a number of states have already filed lawsuits challenging the ban, arguing that it harms transgender students and it creates a hostile environment.
And it's interesting because this whole conversation we're talking about it at kind of like this political this theoretical level, but it's affecting real people,
Right.
right? These are athletes, these are students.
Exactly. And in some of these articles, you find some really powerful stories from transgender athletes talking about how this ban makes them feel excluded, invalidated.
Mhm.
They just want to compete in the sports they love, just like anybody else. And they don't think they should be punished for being who they are.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? It's like taking something away that they're passionate about.
Yeah, and a lot of them point out that this idea of trans women dominating women's sports, it's not really supported by the evidence. There's been very few instances of trans women even competing at the elite levels. And focusing on these sort of exceptional cases creates this really distorted picture of reality.
Oh, so it's almost like we're we're focusing on the outliers,
Yeah.
the exceptions.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and using that to make broader
Yeah.
generalizations.
Okay. So we've got these two really strong sides, it seems like, to this issue. A lot of opinions, and it sounds like it's already headed for kind of a legal showdown, right?
Yeah. Trump's actually encouraging the legal challenges. He's stated that he thinks the Supreme Court will rule in his favor,
Yeah.
and obviously that would have a huge impact.
Yeah, it would set a national precedent.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the NCAA because I know they already have some regulations in place regarding testosterone levels in athletes, which kind of at the surface seems to align with Trump's executive order.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the NCAA, their policy on testosterone, it's in their Tonal 11 policy document. It requires trans women athletes to undergo hormone therapy, maintain certain testosterone levels, and it's for a specific period before they can compete. And that was all implemented to address these concerns about biological advantage.
Okay. But I imagine this policy has also been criticized, right?
Oh, absolutely. Critics argue that focusing solely on testosterone levels is an oversimplification
Right.
of a really complex issue. They point out that athletic performance is influenced by a lot of things: training, skill, genetics, all of that. And they argue that mandating hormone therapy is intrusive and it's medically unnecessary for some trans athletes.
Okay, so even though there is something in place, it's still very much a point of contention.
Yeah, it's not a perfect solution by any means.
Okay, so and this is where we get to kind of like another layer of this whole thing, this whole debate.
Yeah.
The political implications. Because Trump has even gone so far as to say that this issue could impact elections, right?
Right. He's saying that liberal governors who oppose the ban they're out of touch with public opinion and that they could face consequences at the ballot box.
Oh wow. So he's really kind of like upping the ante.
Yeah, it's a pretty classic political strategy. You take a divisive issue, you connect it to electoral outcomes, and that raises the stakes for opponents, and it could sway voters.
So where do you see all of this going? I mean, it doesn't seem like, reading through all of this, it doesn't seem like this is going to be resolved anytime soon.
It's really tough to say. It's such a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides. I think we'll definitely continue to see legal battles, and the outcome of those are going to shape the future of transgender athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even beyond the legal stuff, this is a conversation about gender identity, about inclusion, about what it means to have a level playing field.
Right. So it's really about how we define fairness and equality.
Exactly. And those are questions that we're going to be grappling with for years to come.
It's a big one. It seems like this is so much more than just sports,
Yeah.
It's about how we create a society that's inclusive and how we recognize and value everyone's rights.
Well, this has been really, I think, eye-opening. Thanks for breaking it down.
Yeah, no problem. It's a really interesting topic, and I encourage everyone to check out the sources and what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. We'll be sure to link to all the articles we mentioned in the show notes.
Absolutely. Think about it for yourself.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.